There's a specific kind of pain that nobody really warns you about. It's not the pain of a breakup. It's not the pain of betrayal. It's the pain of being in a relationship with someone who is technically still there, but never actually arrives. Someone who can hold a conversation, hold your hand, hold a job, but somehow cannot hold emotional space for you. That is the emotionally unavailable partner. And if this video found you, you probably already know exactly what I mean. Here's what this video is going to do. We're going to break down where this pattern actually comes from, not the surface level answer, but the psychological and neurological roots. We're going to look at why these people are so impossible to stop thinking about, and that answer is going to make you uncomfortable because part of it has nothing to do with them. And we're going to talk about the only thing that actually matters. What changes when you finally understand this? No pseudoscience here, no vague platitudes. Everything I'm going to share is backed by attachment research, neuroscience, and clinical psychology. I'll cite my sources. If a claim can't be verified, I won't make it. Let's get into it. First, let's be clear about what we're actually talking about. Emotional unavailability is not a personality disorder, it's not a character flaw, and it is not the same thing as being bad at texting. Psychologists define it as an impaired ability to recognize, access, and express one's own emotions, which in turn makes deep relational bonding extremely difficult. The key word there is impaired, not absent, not chosen, impaired. And this is the first thing most people get completely wrong about it. They assume the unavailable partner doesn't feel anything, that they're cold, indifferent, hollow. The science says otherwise, and I'll show you exactly why in a few minutes. Now, emotional unavailability lives on a spectrum. On one end, someone who just struggled to process a difficult year. On the other, someone with deeply entrenched avoidant attachment patterns that have been operating on autopilot since childhood. The version we're talking about today is the second one, and according to the research, approximately 20 to 25% of adults carry a dismissive-avoidant attachment style, the most common form of insecure attachment, and the one most directly linked to emotional unavailability. That is not a small number. That is 1 in 4 or 5 people you'll date. So where does this come from? The answer starts in the first 2 years of life, and it starts with a question every infant's brain is asking: is it safe to feel things here? John Bowlby's attachment theory, now supported by decades of neuroscience, tells us that early interactions with caregivers create what are called internal working models. Think of them as the brain's operating system for relationships. When a caregiver is consistently warm and responsive, the infant's brain learns feelings are safe to have, other people can meet my needs. But when a caregiver is emotionally unavailable, dismissive, inconsistent, or absent, the infant's brain learns something different. Expressing what I feel doesn't bring comfort. It might make things worse, so I stop expressing. This is not a conscious decision, it is an adaptation. The brain of a child in that environment literally rewires itself to suppress emotional signals as a way of surviving the environment. And this is the part that research has now made undeniable. Children of emotionally unavailable caregivers don't just learn emotional distance cognitively, they develop immeasurably higher baseline cortisol levels and altered physiological stress responses. The unavailability is in their body, not just in their mind. By adulthood, this has calcified into what psychologists call dismissive-avoidant attachment. The individual is self-sufficient, intellectually sharp, functionally impressive, and completely unreachable at the level of genuine emotional intimacy. They didn't decide to be this way. Their nervous system was trained to be this way by an environment that made emotional openness feel dangerous. Now here's what nobody talks about, because understanding their origin story still doesn't explain your side of this. Why are you drawn to this person? Why does the dynamic feel so electric, so consuming, so impossible to walk away from, even when every rational part of you knows it's not working? The answer to that is one of the most important things psychology has ever discovered about human relationships, and it starts with your brain. and a slot machine. Stay with me here. In the 1950s, behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something strange about reinforcement. When rewards were given on a predictable schedule, animals would engage and stop when the rewards stopped. But when rewards were given on a random, unpredictable schedule, something different happened. The subjects became obsessed. They kept going, long after the rewards had stopped. The uncertainty itself became the engine. This is called intermittent reinforcement, and it is the psychological blueprint of every slot machine ever built. It is also the blueprint of what your brain experiences with an emotionally unavailable partner. When your partner is warm, it feels extraordinary, not because of who they are, but because of when it arrived, after the silence, after the coldness, after the distance. The dopamine spike is not just about the warmth, it's about the relief from not having it. And here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. Your brain codes that relief as being caused by the person in front of you. The same person who caused the stress becomes the perceived source of relief from it. Psychiatrist and researcher Patrick Carnes called this the betrayal bond, and it operates neurochemically almost identically to substance addiction. Brain imaging studies have confirmed the similarity. This is why leaving feels impossible. It's not weakness, it's not low standards, it is neurological withdrawal. Your brain is not in love, your brain is in withdrawal from an intermittent reward cycle. And it goes even deeper, because many of us don't just respond to emotional unavailability, we seek it out, unconsciously, reliably, again and again. Psychodynamic psychology calls this repetition compulsion, the unconscious tendency to recreate early relational dynamics in adult relationships. If you grew up trying to earn the love of someone who is emotionally distant, your nervous system learned to associate effort with love, challenge with love, uncertainty with love. So when you meet someone who is stable, warm, consistent, your brain doesn't register a high dopamine response. It labels it boring. And when you meet someone who is unavailable, guarded, unpredictable, your nervous system says, this is familiar, this is love. It is not, but the body doesn't know the difference. Yet. Here's the part that usually surprises people. Most of us assume the emotionally unavailable person doesn't feel much, that the distance is because there's nothing there, that they're the calm one in the chaos. Neuroscience says the opposite. Studies using physiological monitoring show that avoidant individuals, during moments of relationship conflict, have stress markers, cortisol levels, heart rate, skin conductance that are statistically comparable to their highly anxious partners. They are not less distressed, they are equally distressed, they just cannot consciously access the distress. Their brain has developed a deactivation strategy, a neural mechanism that intercepts emotional signals before they reach behavioral expression. It blocks the feeling from arriving at the surface. Think about what that actually means. The person across from you, who seems detached, who says, "I'm fine," while everything is clearly not fine, is not being cold. They are in a system of profound emotional suppression that they cannot simply decide to stop. This doesn't excuse unavailability, but it completely changes what you're actually dealing with. You are not being kept out because you aren't enough. You are being kept in because they were locked in long before you arrived. So now we understand the origin, we understand the chemistry, we understand the neuroscience. But why do people stay stuck in this dynamic, even when they understand all of this? There are 3 traps, and most people are operating inside at least one of them.
Trap 1. The unlocking fantasy. This is the belief that the right combination of love, patience, and persistence will eventually unlock the partner, that you are the exception, that they just haven't met someone safe enough before. Here's what the research actually says. You cannot externally motivate internal change in another person. External pressure on an avoidant nervous system doesn't produce opening, it produces more withdrawal. The pursuit intensifies the very distance you're trying to close. The unlocking fantasy is not love. It is the old wound wearing love's clothes. Trap 2. the self-erasure loop. In an attempt to not rock the boat, the pursuing partner begins editing themselves. They stop bringing up hard topics. They stop stating their own needs. They make themselves smaller, hoping a smaller version of them will finally fit through the gap. What actually happens is that both people lose. The pursuer loses their sense of self. The avoidant partner never has the friction that would require real growth. And the pursuer ends up carrying a new wound. Not just, "I wasn't wanted," but "I abandoned myself trying to be wanted." That second wound is often the harder one to heal. Trap 3. The misread evidence. This one is subtle, and it's the one that keeps people in the longest. Because emotionally unavailable partners are not unavailable 100% of the time. There are moments. A real conversation at 2 a.m. A weekend where everything felt different. A moment of genuine vulnerability. And the anxious brain holds on to those moments as proof that the real version of this person exists, and that if you just wait long enough, they will return to being that version. But those moments are not previews. They are the exception, and exceptions are not the rule. Intermittent warmth in a pattern of consistent distance is not a relationship getting better. It is a variable ratio reinforcement schedule doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping you in the game. Here's the honest accounting. Long-term pursuit of emotional unavailability doesn't just leave you without connection. Research documents that the anxious partner in this dynamic consistently reports high levels of loneliness, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion, while simultaneously feeling responsible for the relationship's emotional temperature. You carry the weight, you do the labor, and you do all of it while also managing the psychological impact of never quite being met. The cost is not just the relationship, it is the version of yourself you become while staying in it. So, what do you actually do with all of this? Here's what the research makes clear. First, understand this is a pattern, not a verdict. An attachment style is not a life sentence. Psychologists have documented a phenomenon called earned secure attachment. Adults who had insecure, painful early experiences, who develop genuinely secure attachment patterns in adulthood. And here is the finding that changes everything. On every clinical measure of relationship quality and emotional regulation, people with earned security are statistically indistinguishable from those who were securely attached from birth. The wound does not define the outcome. The work does. But, and this matters, that work has to be chosen by the person who needs to do it. You cannot earn security for someone else. You can only earn it for yourself. Second, recalibrate what chemistry means. If the people you've been most drawn to have consistently been emotionally unavailable, that is information about your nervous system's template for love, not about your standards, not about your worth, and not about what you deserve. The clinical guidance here is uncomfortable but necessary. The boring feeling you get with a consistent, warm partner is not a sign of incompatibility. It is your nervous system encountering safety for possibly the first time and not knowing what to do with it. Third, stop trying to fix, start trying to see. The most important shift is this: from trying to change the unavailable partner to understanding your own patterns of attraction. Because the unavailable partner is not the whole story. The more important question is, what in you recognizes this as home? That's the question that, when answered honestly, changes the pattern. Not just in this relationship, but in all of them. Understanding this doesn't make the pain disappear overnight, but it does give you something pain without context never can: a map. A map of where the pattern comes from, how it keeps you in, and where the actual exit is.
If anything in this video landed for you, I want to know which of the three traps you recognized most in yourself or in your relationship. Tell me in the comments. No judgment here. Those conversations matter, and I read every one. If you want more on the psychology of relationships, attachment, and why we do the things we do with the people we love, subscribe. This is what we do here. Take care of yourself.